Hello everybody, this is Brian O'Haron. This is February 12th, 2 days before Valentine's Day, 2009. It was just about 50 years ago where I met my Valentine at Highland Lake at a friend's cottage. We're still here, 50 years later. Did quite a bit in the meantime, however. Hope we're here 50 more years. Today you will see the picture of Abraham Lincoln and Charles Darwin, both 200 years since their birth. These both men mean quite a bit to me because, as you know, I did read the 3-volume biography of Carl Sandburg's many years ago, probably in my early 20s, and I was quite impressed by that. And Carl Sandburg was still alive in those days. And, of course, we had John Brown down in Torrington. We had the Civil War that my great-grandfather fought in, had enlisted at an early age and fought in the Civil War, and all the things that Lincoln is known for and has done for us. And we all know about Abraham Lincoln. This is a year where we're probably going to hear too much about Abraham Lincoln. It's been on talking about Abraham Lincoln all year. Special books have come out. And now that we have an African-American president, there is a lot more significance to this whole thing. And I did tell you once before that I met Martin Luther King in Kansas at one of the Baptist church. He gave a talk there in the early 60s. I brought my wife to that and met him and had a few talks with him. So all that's quite close to me. And when I was at Kansas, I was involved in the civil rights movement with many of the African-American leaders we had there at the time, Gale Sayers and a lot of the people like that. So you're going to see both of them. Of course, Charles Darwin, I lived in England for 13 years, and I know a lot about Charles Darwin. And being a systems analyst, I appreciate Charles Darwin. He's probably one of my favorite stars. I don't get involved in any religious arguments, but as far as a systems analyst was concerned, he went out on a boat for 5 years and studied the fauna and flora all over the world, and then he wrote his masterpiece. And everything we do today, we realize how system-oriented everything is. And if you sell a few people houses with no money down and people who can't afford the houses, and then you jack up their interest rate a few years later, then the whole world tumbles, as you see now, like dominoes, and it's going to take us a heck of a long time to fix that problem. So Darwin is also quite important, his thought process and the training he gave everybody about system thinking. So we'll see his picture up today probably for most of the show. This week I will be discussing a bit about the Fed and state discussions and decisions this week that may affect our town budgets. What I'm trying to do here from week to week, some people think I might be going into too much detail at too high a level, but I'm trying to talk a bit about what's happening down in Washington, what's happening in Hartford that may affect our own budget for fiscal 9 and 10. And that's what the point is here. I try to keep it at a high level. Maybe sometimes I get into too much detail. I apologize for that. I will mostly be discussing the progress on the local town fiscal 2009-2010 budgets that are due to the selectmen from the town manager and the Board of Education on March 15th, 2009. They can get them there a little earlier than that, but they can't get them there any later than that. That's about 1 month away. As you may know, because of the present difficult economic situation, the selectmen have followed the pattern of other leaders around the state and country by asking the town manager and Board of Education to submit zero tax increase budgets. Budgets that won't require them to tax the people in Winsted and Winchester any more than they have in 2008-2009. The budgets will be dependent upon increases or decreases from the state. None of that dust is settled yet. There are discussions happening, but we don't know yet exactly what we'll get from the state and won't for quite a while. And possible increases from the federal stimulus package. And I did read you some numbers over the last few weeks about that. May or may not happen. It all has to settle down. The budgets once submitted may or may not enable a zero tax increase for residents. If not, further open public discussions will take place. All the public will be invited to all these meetings, and decisions will be made by the town leaders. The first fiscal 2009-2010 annual town budget meeting will be scheduled, and the proposed budget will be discussed. The budget may be reduced at this meeting, but not increased. At the annual town budget meeting, a town budget referendum will be scheduled for all willing to vote. We've had trouble getting people out to vote. Let's hope we can do better this time. And the proposed budget get all willing to vote the proposed budget up or down. It may be a good idea to have a few questions on this ballot just in case. If I were the town manager, I would have a couple questions on the ballot just in case it does fail. Then maybe you could get some idea of which way he would have to go. For example, people might not want a zero budget. Maybe they'll want a higher budget or a lower budget. So it'd be nice to have some questions on the ballot. The last budget pretty well proved that the main issue during these lean years is the amount of the tax increase, which we've been talking about for a year and a quarter now, expecting this kind of thing to happen. We didn't think it would be as bad as it is now, but we knew it wasn't going to be good because of revals. And you can read in all the papers how all the other towns are now fighting their revals, 30, 40, 50% increases at the worst possible time. So the last budget pretty well proved that the main issue during these lean years is the amount of the tax increase, not petty minority interests. It's the tax increase that was the problem. If we had a zero tax increase the first time, we would probably passed on the first thing. But nobody knew exactly what would be successful. And so what they do then is they have a tendency to go for what they think the town needs. If it gets voted down, then they massage it and they go again. And until finally it gets passed, this time it got passed on the 6th vote. I've been around hundreds of budgets around the world in my working and personal life and have never seen a perfect budget. There will never be a perfect budget. There's no such thing. So whatever they come up with, people will niggle and pick at the edges, and they'll have reasons for not voting for the budget. But that's good. I mean, they should get their feedback in. But I would say let's get the feedback in now before the budgets are prepared. And let's make sure that everybody speaks loud and clear to the selectmen, town manager, and Board of Education superintendent and Board of Education commission, and make sure that they know what your feelings are about this year's budget. If you think it's zero is too low, tell them. If you think it's too high, tell them. And if you think it should be lower, tell them that. Give them ideas on how they can help manage this budget. It doesn't do any good to just say, well, zero is good, but we don't like the way they put it together. That doesn't help us any. We need to have good, positive input. This budget passed, the zero budget passed by like a two-thirds margin here. So it was pretty adamant what the people wanted in the end. This is an election year, and I'm pushing for no change to the selectmen if possible in the November election. No retread candidates that have been there before and dropped out or lost previous elections. And I'm also trying to encourage people to add 2 or more professional educators and hopefully a businessman or 2 or a woman or 2 as chairman of the Board of Education with a good deal of business experience to run the business of educating your children regardless of party affiliation. If these good business people or these excellent professional educators are from any party or unaffiliated or from the Independent Party, Democratic Party, Republican Party, doesn't matter. What matters is their background and their ability to handle the job in a professional manner. I always say I think we got a business problem here at the Board of Education, not an education problem. That doesn't mean that we couldn't have improve our education. That's why I think you also have to have on the Board of Education a couple real expert educators who can help fashion us, or at least a consultant who can help fashion us into the modern day and age. Remember, education is about 65% of our budget. Very, very important. And the numbers of students are decreasing, according to the superintendent of schools, while costs continue to increase. So we're in that position where we're having less students in our system, less coming in the bottom and going out the top, and but the costs are still going up, and maybe unproportionately. Now is the time to get your ideas into the town manager and or the school superintendent, or both. Now with that, we'll go to the agenda for tonight. February 12th, 2009, 2 days from Valentine's Day, and I guess Mondays we're going to celebrate the President's Day. The 6 proposed 2008-2009 town budget referendum statistics I'll be going over. Last week I made a mistake, and I told you we had 1,000 more voters than we did. I apologize for that. I didn't have the numbers at my fingertips towards the show, but I'll correct that right now. I always try to correct known problems that aren't simple spelling things and all. Okay, then I'm going to talk a bit, very briefly, about what's happening down in Washington and with the state budget information. And then I'm going to talk a bit about our school budget information for the 2009-2010 year. I got most of this from the newspaper because I couldn't attend the meeting the other night, so if there's any mistakes in there, I apologize. But it's going to be close enough for comfort and to give you a rough idea what's happening. I've still got a long way to go before this budget settles down, so I can correct it from week to week if I have to, or if I get more information. We want to talk a bit about the pre-K through 8 Winston School redistricting that they're being thinking about with the Board of Education. They have a subcommittee for that. The School Building Committee progress, that's the school OCR Pearson complaints. That's starting to move along now that the budget has been approved for 208-209. The town, we've been held up, by the way, on this because we didn't have a budget and we couldn't go to the state and get started and get their guarantee of the money without having our own committed funds. The town for fiscal year 2009-2010 budget direction we're heading in, and then I want to try to talk a bit about enterprise corridor progress if I have enough time. There's not too much to talk about there, but I like to bring you up to speed because that's the only way we're going to get any revenue into this town in the short to medium term. While we're, meanwhile we're losing revenue, there are places closing down, stores closing, and people laying people off in the factories. So we could have less revenue this year than we had last year. Not many building permits are happening and things like that throughout the state and the country. We'll keep a close eye on that. But anyway, 2008-2009 budget, that's the one we just approved 2 weeks ago. Finally passed on a 6th vote, 0 tax increase. There was an education increase, however, in their budget by 2.25% or so, and there was about a 1.13 decrease in the town budget. And again, these are pretty close to being accurate. It might be off a little bit, but not much. And then the mill was voted on at the last election to be 24.67 mills, which you already got in your tax bills that were sent out. So there won't be any more tax bills except for the normal ones that you get twice a year. You already got one, you'll get another one. I guess it's July, somewhere in that time frame. Okay, now the voting, I want to correct what I said last week. 905 yes votes for this and 347 no votes. And the number of people who voted were 1,252, and that was the lowest turnout we had for all 6 referendums. 11 positions were eliminated. The town eliminated 1 position, the parking control aide, and education eliminated 10 people, 3 teachers, 1 social worker, and 6 paraprofessionals. Now, I do want to say here again, I keep repeating this every week, that when you go for a budget referendum and it's turned down, you have to stay with the prior fiscal year's budget until a new budget is approved. That's according to the charter. So you really shouldn't be hiring more people. shouldn't be gambling, shouldn't be saying, hey, we'll get it approved on the next one and it'll be whatever it'll be. You kind of got to wait until the budget's approved. And then you can go ahead and you'll know how much money you got to spend, and you can hire teachers or you can hire policemen or whatever, and you can go. But I do want to say that we shouldn't be in this pickle that once the budget gets approved on the sixth time, we have to go back and cut out $500,000, lay off teachers and other things. So what we did there on the school side was 3 teachers were laid off or let go one way or another, 1 social worker, and 6 paraprofessionals. I'm pretty sure the social worker was with the education department, but one way or another, a social worker was let go, and 6 paraprofessionals. Because we couldn't afford, once we found out we had a 0 increase, we could not afford to keep them on the payroll. Now, here's what the votes were. There were 7,122 plus or minus voters for 2008, 2009. There was, we started out with a lot of people voting, 1,685. Then we went 1,258 on the second referendum, 1,284. Then we went up to the highest number, 1,777 on the fourth referendum. Then back down to 1,306, and finally on the last one, 1,252. Now, keep a close eye on this budget this year, because this is going to be a rough year at all levels. Now we're going to talk a bit about the Fed, Congress, Treasury, and state progress. And the reason I talk about this each week is because we're very dependent upon what they do at those levels. Very dependent. Our local budget is very dependent on these, depending on what they give us and depending upon what decisions they make at all these levels. Because we are very dependent on the state, who's dependent upon the feds in a lot of cases for our budget each year. So I think we get like $6 million of our $31 or $2 million budget comes from the state in one form or another, mostly a lot of it in the form of the ECS grant. But anyway, there's quite a bit of money that comes from the other areas for us. Now, the Fed, that's the quantitative easing. I was telling you that the Treasury, that the Fed is doing a quantitative easing policy, the 0 interest rate, 0 to 0.25 interest rate, and the watching closely of the interest rates on the Treasury auctions and things like that, and they'll step in and buy treasuries if they need to keep things under control, so we don't spiral into greater deflation than perhaps we're in already. But I did see in the paper today where the retail prices went up 1% this month. They've been going down over the last 5 or 6 months, but they actually went up this month, and it was kind of a quandary there. I don't really get to the bottom of that yet. But anyway, so the Fed quantitative easing policy continues and is quietly and slowly helping to improve the credit problem. They're still lending through the discount window, and they're doing a lot of tricks that they have available to them to try to help us get us out of this recession, even if other things never happen. The Chinese will continue to buy our Treasury bills, as we are still the best bet despite impending inflation possibilities. And what this basically says is people were worried that the Chinese were going to inflate this dollar by putting out all this trillions and trillions and trillions of printing trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. So to meet a lot of these socialistic approaches we're taking now, but and people were worried that the Chinese might buy our bonds and our bills. So. But that looks like it's not going to be a problem, because the rest of the world's in worse shape than we are, and they feel that no matter how bad we are and what the inflation fears are, we're probably still the best bet in the world now to purchase our debt. But remember, if they buy things and then things get inflated, they lose money on it. Now, as far as Congress is going, the controversial 3.5 million jobs tax cut, it was 4 million to start with, but it's now down to 3.5 million jobs, and a lot of people question that, whether that'll ever happen or help us. I'm sure, something will happen. We just don't know what. So there's 3.5 million jobs, tax cut, and spending stimulus. That's what they've been working on over the last 5 months or so between the two administrations. The package is now down to $789 billion, and the interest on it, something like $300 billion, takes you up over $1 trillion. So you've got big bucks in there. That's the compromise package is now agreed by Senate and House subcommittee, with some arm twisting by the president. Final votes in the House and Senate will be over the next few days. Then it will go to the president for signature, and money will rain down on us all until we have to pay our taxes, and then for the next 100 years, and we have to pay all this back unless they deflate out of it some way. There's no guarantee of success on this plan, and that's one of the things that rattles a good portion of the world. No guarantee of success. This is trial and error to a certain extent. It's a little worse than that because it has been tried elsewhere in the world during recessions, even including in our country, and it hasn't worked. So there's a lot of question mark about that. And as I told you last week, Wall Street stock exchanges all over the world do not like uncertainty. They don't like it at all. A lot of trading going on now, not much investing. As far as the Treasury is concerned, the high priority bailout package, rescuing the banks, toxic assets, and helping people with foreclosures, etc., was explained by Tim Geithner this week, the Treasury Commissioner, in concept only. And that's another problem because concept only doesn't have much definition, no detail. So the stock market went down about 5%, at least the Dow Jones Industrial Average, while he was speaking. I watched it go down, 0.5% an hour or so. And they don't like the package. That again needs a lot of further detail and explanation. And that should be coming, we're told, in a week or two. I think Geithner's overseas now, the end of this week and maybe beginning of next week. But I'm sure there are people down there burning the midnight oil trying to figure out, best people we got available in this country probably, trying to figure out how to work together and make this happen. Now, one of our problems, as I always say, at government levels, no matter whether it's the national government level, the state government level, or the town government level, it's very difficult to get people to work together. A lot of different ideologies, and where they should be open and accept information and be more proactive about things. They have a tendency to form ideologies and stick with them, and we get problems. So this may cost $2 to $5 trillion prior to completion, most of which we'll have to print one way or another, and then raise the money around the world. It's like a mortgage in a way. Okay, no guarantee of success here either. Matter of fact, this is even more controversial than the first one. So a lot of controversy here. So meanwhile, though, we are still proceeding with the Fed, and they're moving along with their easing. And some people think that before all this stuff gets done and is helpful, that the easing will solve this problem over a year and a half or so. Maybe yes, maybe no. Bernanke was on TV this week for questioning. The heads of the major banks were on for almost a whole day. Bernanke was on for almost a whole day, 5 or 6 hours. They had all the stimulus package people on almost all week, and then they had Geithner on this week talking a lot about his money, and it's very instructional, but not a lot of decisions were made. The state of Connecticut, Governor Rell put out a proposal last week. They're going to try to keep the ECS grant as stable as possible for the town. That they're going to try not to decrease our ECS grant, but their budget is based upon a $2.5 billion shortfall. So the jury's still out on the state budget and what'll get approved and what'll get passed down from the stimulus package to the state, and then what they in turn are going to pass down to us. So all this is up in the air now, and it's pretty hard it'll take us maybe a month or two, maybe 3, before all this settles down. Matter of fact, we might be having to vote on our own budget before these people have all their minds made up here at the state and federal level. Um, there may be decreases or elimination of other grants that we have. I think I saw in the paper the other day one of our grants is going to be less $30,000 or $40,000, and maybe some others ones will be increased. We don't know. Time will tell. We'll be talking about this for 2 or 3 months, I'm sure. The education budget for fiscal 2009-2010, I did go to a couple of these meetings. They had 4 or 5 over the last few weeks. I only went to 2 of them. But the selectmen have told this Board of Education that they want a 0 tax increase proposed for FY 2009-2010. Now, I want to say that the Board of Education, the Superintendent of Schools, and a new financial controller for the Board of Education and School System, he's brand new. He's only been there a couple of weeks. They're just at the beginning stages of looking at this budget, and all I can report on is how far they have gone so far. And remember, they don't know exactly what they're getting from the state. They don't know exactly what they're getting from the federal level and what it's to be used for, although they have some hints. So they've got there's a lot of time and dust that has to settle here before they can finalize their budget. But the school superintendent's initial rough preliminary budget that he put out this week to the Board of Education and other bystanders that were there, people that were interested. They were public meetings, so anybody can go. Estimates that already on our first pass we're going to be $650,000 over the last year's budget. So one way or another, if they follow the direction of the selectmen, and the selectmen stick to it, which I advise them to do, unless they have a very good reason not to, they're already about 3% over. So they have a 3% increase unless in the tax, unless they find another way to decrease it, either within the school system or in the town side of the budget. So this is not meeting the intent of the selectmen. So it may, by the time we're done with this whole thing, but it doesn't right now. Now, besides that, there's an increase over the budget of $650,000, but there's also, I guess this is included. I think I talked to somebody before this program, and they said this $125,000 here for capital improvements is also in that $650,000. So I've got a mistake on here. So it's $650,000. And of that $650,000, about $125,000 of it is going to be used for what they call maintenance and capital improvements in the school, and the things that needed to be done over the years, and maybe still need to be done, maybe not. I can't be the judge of that. But the superintendent says that this rough initial budget that he's put together for discussion purposes is based on everything being as it is. The same amount from the Gilbert, the same amount of teachers, the same amount of buildings, the same amount of everything. So I guess I think about $250,000 of the $650,000 is increases for the existing teachers and personnel. Not exactly positive about that. But if you're interested in that budget, you can go down to the Board of Education and you can get a copy of the breakdown. Now, I don't think it's complete yet. I think they still have to beat it into shape and, get feedback on it and look it over. But one way or another, they should be looking for another $650,000 so they can get the 0 and not penalize the town side of the budget. When they say it's based on everything as it is, there's no redistricting included in this $650,000 piece. Everything being as it is does not include redistricting. Now, redistricting is something they are looking at to see if they can save some money if needed and get the $650,000 down to 0 as directed by the selectmen. $250,000 over current salaries. That's what's that $650,000, $250,000 of it is for they're over on the current salaries, and then the $125,000 for the repairs of the 3 schools includes $24,000 to retrofit boilers at Bachelor School and $10,000 for a new clock system for Pearson Middle School. And I put here, and just to let you know that, have you ever noticed how the clock in the Pearson band room never tells the right time. Pierre Boulez would have liked that. He was a famous composer and conductor. The Board of Education can reduce line items before presenting this proposed budget to the town on March 1st, 2009. That means they can eliminate $650,000 worth of costs by line item if they choose to do so. Or they can hand it in the way it is and probably get it bounced back at them again. The selectmen can reduce or increase the bottom line only when they get it from the Board of Education. They don't, like the Board of Education can knock out line items, but the Board of Selectmen cannot. No line items can be, changes are allowed in the Board of Education budget by the town. The Selectmen can only change the bottom line. They can say, you put in for 20 million, you're going to get 19 million, or you're going to get 18 million, or you're going to get 21 million, whatever. So that's all they can do. And I've always thought that the selectmen sitting around trying to cut money out of even the town budget is the wrong thing to do. They have to leave that up to the town manager, and they have to leave this up to the Board of Education, and I'm pretty sure that's a state law. They don't have much choice on that. The budget, they can make recommendations or suggestions. If it were me, I wouldn't even do that. I'd let I'd do that in a separate meeting with the Board of Education, and then I would let the Board of Education make the decisions, and I think that's probably the way it usually works anyway. Except the last time, the selectmen finally had to cut it at the 6th time to 0. And as you know, education did get like 2.2% increase anyway, even though it was a tax increase. It was 0. This budget assumes everything as is until more information is available from Gilbert, the state, and the federal government. And it goes through the meat grinder of the Board of Education, the public, and the selectmen. Based upon the economy, and perhaps less state money coming in the next few years, we talked about this on previous programs, this could be a tough budget year for everybody. Everybody. So everything must be taken seriously, and everything must be accounted for, and accurate numbers should be around, and visibility should be there so everybody can see what's in the budget, and how it's spent from month to month, and how we're doing to achieve our budget over the year once we do approve a budget. So that has been tightened up this year. It's still being tightened up, but every month the Board of Selectmen will get a copy of the forecast from the school for the rest of the year and their expenses to date against budget, and they will get one from the town manager, and then that will be available to everybody because it's public information. Shouldn't have to go to Freedom of Information. You can get it right from the town, and then you can see exactly how it's going. And my own view is that the more visibility you get, the more everybody sees everything in the town budget and how it's broken down, and the education budget and how it's broken down. That's the best thing that can happen to the Board of Education, because everybody will see it, they'll get it into shape, and then they'll get a lot of trust, more trust than they have today on their budgeting, and there'll be a lot more visibility, a lot more understanding, and if the budget is tight and clean, everybody will help them get more money one way or another, hopefully by getting these developments into town and increasing revenue. And if it's not in good shape, they'll point out where it can be improved. So I encourage everybody to look at these numbers. There are some people that are diligently looking at these numbers and get to know them well. And I encourage the Board of Education, new finance director, to work closely with Henry Centrella, the town finance director, to make sure everything is in sync. Now remember, the town pays the bills for the Board of Education. So Henry Centrella does know what bills are paid every month, and he can, he can sit down with the finance director of the Board of Education, and they can compare, and they can put out a jointly signed accounting, and then everybody will feel much more comfortable than they have in the last year and a half. There's a lot of distrust here in this whole area, and that needs to be cleaned up. So I encourage everybody to get involved here, get a copy of that, go to the meetings, get your 2 cents in, question it if you think it doesn't add up. Often when you get this information to people, well, 1 and 1 does not equal 2. So we've got to be very careful about that. There will be a special selectman / Board of Education meeting on March 5th, 2009 to discuss the 2009-2010 Board of Education budget. Anybody can go to that. You're all welcome. I'll be there. I hope I'll be there anyway, on March 5th. And providing the weather's not too bad, and I'm still healthy. So go there and listen. Look at all the numbers, take them home, digest them, show them to your accountants. Do anything you can to help get this thing beat into shape and get to the point where everybody trusts each other and nobody thinks they got cards up their sleeves. You know, when I first went to Las Vegas, they made you cut your sleeves off because they were afraid you might try to hide a card up there, you know. Nowadays, I think they can probably tell electronically, so they don't make you cut your sleeves off anymore. The redistricting for the school system by grade decision has been delayed until March 6, 2009. I've talked about this before. They have decided so far not to cut out any schools for next year, or the following year, I guess, on this subcommittee, but they did recommend two options, and I'm told they're called Option A and Option B, for redistricting the schools if they have to get down to this zero increase that we're looking for. This is Option A. Let's see, that's on the next page, I'm sorry, Option A. Okay, redistricting options. Options possible for 2009-2010 school year if approved by the Board of Education. The subcommittee is putting these options together. They're talking to town people that go to the meetings, teachers, mothers and fathers, students, other interested town parties, politicians, everything. They're trying to get the best input. As far as I can see, they run a pretty open meeting, and they're trying to get all the information out to people and get people to give them feedback. And there's never total agreement at any of these meetings because everybody comes from a different viewpoint. But eventually it'll all come together. Now, the reason they're thinking about this redistricting is not just to do it, because there is a lot involved in it, but for educational, economically sound, and financially viable reasons. That's the reasons they want to look at this redistricting. And many concerns have been expressed by some of the people that attend the meetings and go through the numbers, and that's happened. And the Board of Education has said that, subcommittee has said that it will not make any hasty decisions on this, and that's one of the reasons why they've postponed the decision until the 6th of March. Now, I got Option 1 here, but I'm told it's Option A, and that is, if we select Option A, the Board of Education, because it saves us some money and it meets those other conditions I put up there. Actually, they put those up, but I repeated them. Pre-kindergarten through 2nd grade, plus the Family Resource Center at Bachelor School. So they'll take the pre-kindergarten through 2nd grade, plus the Family Resource Center, and put them in Bachelor School. They'll also take grades 3 through 5 at Hinsdale and put them at Hinsdale School. And then they'll take grades 6 through 8 and put them at the Pearson Middle School. So that's Option A. And I'm told by some people who have looked at the numbers and attended the meetings that this is perhaps the best option if we're trying to save money. There still needs to be some more work done here to look at the detail of the budget for this approach. And once this budget is known, how many teachers can we eliminate, how many of this, how many of that, what will we have to add, are there any additions that have to be made for moving costs and things. That's being looked at now. Maybe by next week I'll have a little more information on that. If so, I'll make it a strong point on this program because it's 65% of our budget we're looking at here. So, and then that's happening there. So most people think that Option A, that I've talked to anyway, that's the best option to go because it'll save us the most money. It'll be the simplest to do for a lot of good reasons, which will all come out over the next few weeks. That doesn't mean it'll be chosen. That just means that's what people think at this point in time. Option B, this is option B, pre-kindergarten, kindergarten, the Family Resource Center, and the school district central office, which is now over here on Elm Street in a separate building, rented from somebody. They'll be at the bachelor school under Plan B. I'll repeat that since I had this clumsy thing here. So, pre-kindergarten, kindergarten, the Family Resource Center, and the school district central office, now on Elm Street, and I'm told they can probably save $70,000 or $80,000 by doing that, will be at the bachelor school. And even if they choose option A, they might well consider moving this central office to one of the other buildings, if practical. Save them that $80,000 that they have over at the Elm Street building. It's not all rent. Some of it's heat and utilities and things like that. Grades 1 through 4 would be at Hinsdale under option B. And grades 5 through 8 will be at the Pearson Middle School under option B. Now, I'm told that this is probably the most difficult option and might be the most expensive. That's something we have to wait a week or two to see the correct numbers on that. I'll try to get a copy of them. I'll probably go to the next meeting myself if I can. And then possible decision will be on March 9th, 2009. The Board of Education has scheduled a meeting on March 9th. That's the day after they meet with the selectmen. So they're going to meet, March 6th, 2009. They're going to meet with the selectmen on March 5th, 2009. So on March 6th, they're going to have their meeting and make a decision one way or the other here. My guess is if the selectmen stick to the zero, please, then they'll have to go back and make a decision on here. If they say, it looks like you might be able to get the 3%, which they won't know for sure until it goes through the referendum and the town meeting, then they might try to wing it and stay with the earlier one with the $650,000 extra money in it. I would think that's kind of risky. If I were them, I'd cut back to zero like requested by the selectmen and then add to it later if it looks like one way or another they'd be able to do that. For example, if the town side were going to be down 3%, well, it wouldn't be a wash because the town's got a smaller budget. But anyway, basically, if the town were down by 6%, which it won't be, then maybe they could have 3% more at the school. So it all depends. Or if another Gilbert comes around and throws $10 million at them, then they'll be home free. So, but that's not likely to happen. Now, the school building committee progress. That's the OCR Pearson School. The Pearson OCR complaints are now starting to move ahead. Bids will be going out pretty quick because the budget was passed 2 Saturdays ago. The bids requests are en route to vendors, and they're also dealing with the authorities. I think they're up in Massachusetts somewhere that may fine us or may not fine us. But what I'm told by some people unofficially from this school building committee is that fine is probably unlikely. We'll probably be able to, once we get started with this work and everybody can see we got the contracts and we're moving ahead and we got the money, that this is going to be not too much of a problem and we probably won't get fined on this, but the jury's still out there until we get a definite decision from the school building committee. The town budget, pretty simple. You don't have much more information on the town budget yet. The first glimpse we should have within a week or so. As soon as I know something, which I only get from public information, I'll get it and I'll go over it on one of the programs. The town manager's working directly with his reports now. He had some of it in last week. He probably got some more in this week. But the town side of the budget, as directed by the selectmen, are headed for a target zero tax increase if practical. Now, the same thing applies here. If the selectmen say, no, we won't accept 2% more or 3% more, we want it to be zero, then the town manager has to get back in with his direct reports and get it to zero like he did on the last budget when he was told on the sixth budget that it was going to be a zero tax increase for the taxpayers. Now that doesn't mean he can't have, say, a 1% increase like the school had 2% last time, but as long as the total budget is a zero tax increase like the selectmen have asked for, then it'll all work out. Enterprise Corridor progress, that's the corridor between Winston and Torrington, pardon me, that the developments will be on. The updated Sewer and Water Commission plan is due to the state by September 1, 2009 for inclusion in their POCD. Now, that plan was given to the Planning and Zoning Group 2-3 months ago. I was there when they explained it. The people from the Sewer and Water and their engineers explained it to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So they're still waiting to see from the Planning and Zoning Commission whether they have any changes to be made to this plan or not. But one way or another, the work's got to get done, and the thing has to be into the state by September 1, 2009, so the state can include this plan in their POCD. They're trying to update their POCD for the whole state, and we don't want to be the only one that doesn't make it. The last P&Z meeting was postponed until Tuesday, February 17th, 2009, at 7 p.m. Now, at that meeting, they'll also be discussing the POCD. I thought I had some papers on that here, but maybe I don't. But the POCD is being worked on by the Planning and Zoning Commission, and they have a subcommittee working on that with a vendor. I can never remember their initials, but I think it's TBA. I think it's from Bristol area. I'm not quite positive. But anyway, they're working. They're paid by us. Now, one of the problems we have with the POCD is the Planning and Zoning Commission to date has been looking at upgrading the whole POCD for the whole town, which hasn't been upgraded to state standards in many, many years, and mainly due to a lack of funding and probably even a lack of commitment in some areas. So now what's happening is, about a week or so ago, last meeting, a couple weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago now, time goes fast, the Torrington Planning and Zoning Commissioner and the planning manager for the town, for the city of Torrington, came to a planning and zoning meeting. And at that meeting, they spent a good deal of time discussing how they update their plan of conservation and development in Torrington and how they keep it up to date. Now, their POCD is just about up to date. Matter of fact, I think it is up to date. Now, I got a copy. I couldn't get to that meeting for one reason or another, so I got a copy of the minutes, and I went over the minutes, and I read them quite thoroughly. And if you want a copy of the minutes, I guess you can get them off the internet, townofwinchester.org. Then you click on government, and then you click on the planning and zoning meeting minutes, and you can get those. You probably even get the agenda for the next meeting. I don't know if that's up there or not. But anyway, the minutes are quite comprehensive, and what they suggest is kind of what I've been talking about here for a year and a half, is let's do an evolutionary approach to the POCD. The most important thing we have right now in our town to gain revenue, especially in these tough times, is getting that water and sewer down the corridor from Winston to Torrington, and getting in these developments over time, won't happen for quite a while, and getting more businesses down that corridor that pay taxes. And there's some people interested in opening businesses down the corridor, but they have to have water and sewer first, and it's too expensive for them to put it in because they're too small to afford the $3 to $5 million. So it could be a little less if they only go part way. But the first thing we have to do is get this corridor done, get the water and sewer agreed. So my view is that the Planning and Zoning Commission should approve that and get it off to the state and get it adopted by the state. And then they can start working on the second leg, which either can be the downtown plan, 1999 plan that's being evolved, or it can be water drainage around the Highland Lake watershed or whatever, or it could be both. But if you do it a little bit each year, then you'll sooner or later you'll have the whole plan up to date. You'll do it in a priority order, and our most burning priority now, I think, is the enterprise corridor. Other people think a little differently. And then as soon as we can afterwards, do priority number 2, do priority number 3, and let's start getting some revenue into town so that when all this credit stuff thaws out, which is starting to do a little now, not a lot now, but a little now, then there are people who can fund their own developments now. They don't all need to get money from banks and financiers. So, and some of the people that are already down the corridor can do more with their property by hooking up to the water and sewer once a developer puts it in. Now, I want to re-emphasize that this developer is going to probably, because of the economic times now, is not really going to be rushing in there, I don't think, to put the water and sewer in right away once it's improved. They still got to get it approved by the town, the Sewer and Water Commission, and the Director of Public Works. That still has to happen with the, with our engineers and his engineers, and that's going to take time. But he can get that permission to go down there. My guess is he's still going to want to get his golf course permit too from the DEP and the Army Corps before he spends $5 million putting the water and sewer down there. So we need to be ready so that once he's ready, he can get going. And we're not on the critical path. We're not in the way. By then, we should already have our approvals from the state for that piece of the POCD. It should be adopted, and we should be working on step 2, 3, 4, whatever of that POCD and in an evolutionary way. And I think I have no problem with the approach they're taking. I think they're doing a pretty good approach, but I just don't agree that they should be doing an all-at-once approach. It should be step by step. Now, I don't think they're going to get too much money. I can't say. I'm not on a selectman. But I think they pretty much spent the money they have now for the POCD. I know they're trying to get more money from the state or from wherever, and they're hoping they get some from the FY 09-0010 budget. But I'm not so sure that's going to happen. So, and for one reason is they don't really need it to get that first part, the enterprise corridor, adopted. I'm not saying they won't need a little money for engineers or something like that, but basically they can get on and get that adopted, and the state's saying, look, we want this plan by September 1 for your whole town. So maybe that's the first step. And then the second step is to get the enterprise corridor approved. But to a certain extent, both of those help, because if you have the whole town approved for water and sewer by the state, then you'll also have the enterprise corridor, because that's a subset of the town plan. So I'm going to plan to go. There's a meeting next Tuesday. It was supposed to be last Monday, but it got postponed because the commissioner was out of the country or out of the state, and so they postponed that meeting till next Tuesday, day after the holiday. So if you're interested in that, you should get down there, talk to them. Then sooner or later they're going to have a public meeting where they go over the whole plan with everybody in town. I think that's a few months away. Anybody's welcome to go there, get your 2 cents in. And I would say that anybody who's interested in trying to save taxes, trying to be efficient, be economically more self-sufficient, should get down there and express their desire to get on with this work so that we can get moving as soon as the credit drain, credit clog gets loosened up and the development's able to get on with his work. And then we can concentrate more on getting the golf course approved by the DEP and the Army Corps of Engineers. And then we can begin to tell people, hey, we got this approved by the state. Start considering coming down the corridor with your businesses or expanding the businesses you already have down the corridor. Now, I just saw this week, and maybe I'll try to show it to you next week, but a letter was sent out by the EDC, Economic Development Commission, to all the businesses in town, asking them for ideas. And if you're a business owner in town, and I've talked to a lot of business owners in town, they all think the development would help their business one way or another. Now, I'm sure there's some people who don't agree with that and don't think it will help their business. But I think one way or another, even if you have to send in an unsigned letter to the Planning and Zoning, do it, or to the mayor or to the selectmen, and tell them you're in favor of getting this done in an evolutionary manner, getting this water and sewer down there, permission to go down that corridor onto the state POCD as soon as practical, and then let's get on with all this. And then when it comes to, town's going to need a help, the developer to get his 18-hole golf course approved, and we can get behind that. That'll probably take a couple of years, but let's get this step behind us and let's get on with it. So with that, I want to say to everybody, happy Valentine's Day. The weather today has been kind of rainy, and it's melting all the snow. It was a huge fishing derby on Sunday at the lake, and of course Saturday was a very, very successful penguin plunge. I think I looked at it, I saw it on TV. It was very well organized, and a lot of very exciting people. And they, at the time I knew about it, over the weekend, it might be more now, they raised $50 million in a very, very difficult time. $50 million with all this uncertainty in the world, in the state, in the country, and in the town. They still raised $50 million. And I thank everybody who contributed. Thanks for participating. Thanks for contributing. And next year, there'll be another penguin plunge, I'm sure. And off they go again. With that, I say thank you. Happy Valentine's Day. See you next week.